by Commissioner Holness. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you very much. Item 83 is to direct staff to submit a proposal to conduct a disparity study to determine if there is statistically significant underutilization in the award of county prime contracts and subcontracts. Now, in 2010, when I got here, a study was done, was reported out in 2011, January, February, I believe, and it showed that we had significant underutilization of women and minority contractors and subcontractors. The one thing that that study pointed out is that we didn't have the data to really quantify in a proper way what that was. Ms. Henry and her staff has been working towards collecting that data. It's 10 years later. Within that time, the city of Miami has done a disparity study. The school board of Broward County has done a disparity study. West Palm Beach has done one, and it shows that there's significant underutilization in the award of contracts for women and minorities. Since we've been collecting the data, I believe it's time for us to take a look to see where we are. And I know we've done a good amount of work to improve on our processes, and we probably have improved, but have we the data to show what the results are? I don't know that we do, and I think this is one way for us to be able to make that determination, and that's why I bring this item.
Thank you, Commissioner. Hold on one second. This is item 83. We have one speaker. Bernadette Norris Weeks, are you on the line?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Vice
You're recognized,
Mayor,
ma'am, for 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. As a woman of color, I am used to being accused of being venomous or angry, and you know, you get used to terms like that when you're a black woman in this country, especially when you stand up for issues of equity and fairness. And so I get that. But one thing I'm not angry about is this item. Item number 83 and 84, I think, are very good items. They're very sound. They help us measure, you know, the progress and where this county is and where it's going. So I would, just for sake of time, just, Mr. Mayor, I am in support of item number 83 and item number 84. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. And does that mean that you're waiving your time on item 84?
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Debate questions. Let me start taking a list. Commissioner Furr, Dr. Sharif, anyone else? If not, I'm going to ask questions. Okay. Geller, Ryan, Bogan. All right. Okay. Rich, feel free to add your name as we go along. So, first, Commissioner Furr, followed by Dr. Sharif. You're recognized, Commissioner Furr.
I think all of us would like to have this kind of information to know that we're being as fair as we can across the board. But I would think rather than asking for submitting a proposal, I'd rather just ask for the data and have them give us the data, what they've got. And I think that's an easier way to do it. I mean, I think the information's something we all want to see. But if we're already collecting it, and if we've already been collecting it for the last 10 years, let's just see the data. And that, because then we can parse it ourselves and know where we go. And I think, I guess because we're about to have as you have a transition, you kind of want to start with your own benchmarks and know where you're at. And I think that would be a good way to do that. So that's just my thoughts on it. I like the idea of getting the information, just a different way of trying to get it.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Sharif, followed by me, followed by Commissioner Ryan.
So statistically, I don't think that doing a disparity study that costs all this money is going to show us anything other than what we already know, which is we do not have enough minority vendors in our program with enough opportunities to create a disparity in terms of what we're looking at right now. You have to have enough vendor participation and enough opportunities to create a to prove a disparity. And we don't have that, and we haven't had that. And while we're doing a little bit better as time has gone by, I think the money and the focus needs to be on how do we certify vendors? How do we help them get their paperwork in order so that they can become certified minority vendors for Broward County? And how do we create opportunities for them to utilize that certification? Because you can say all day long that you have 150 minority vendors for a specific project or specific field, but if you're not giving the opportunities in that field, you're never going to show the disparity level that you're asking, you're wanting to see, and that you think that you're supposed to see. That's why the last study, everybody kept saying it was flawed, and that's why a lot of these studies come out and they show absolutely nothing, because we're not increasing vendor levels and vendor participation levels to generate a statistical significance to show you what you're asking for. And so I would love for us to have a study, but that's not going to yield what we're looking for. I think a better approach would be to get the numbers, look at the numbers, and then also invest in programs through our Office of Economic and Small Business Development, where they can focus on certifying small and minority vendor businesses so that we can get to the point where we need to get to. All this is going to generate is a bunch of hoopla in the public, like it did before. It's going to make us look like we are disenfranchising small businesses even further, because we're not going to prove what it is we're trying to prove, which is a disparity. So register the vendors, focus on getting the vendor programs and assistance, and then the other part of this, besides the paperwork and the vendor certification, is training on how to go after the bids and proposals and get them, and then the funding, as well as the bonding capabilities for some of the projects that we're requiring them to bid on. So you can't, this is like really putting the cart before the horse. You've got to solve the issues that generate and create the problem, but you can't just keep throwing good money after bad and saying we have a problem, but you're not able to clearly identify that problem. And so right now, that would be my position, is that we get more dollars allocated toward vendor certification, getting more dollars allocated toward training vendors who we're certifying to go after contracts, and then after a period of time, reevaluating that program to see where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. I will reserve my remarks till the end, as I normally do, but I have two questions for the county attorney. First, county attorney, when they're trying, I just want a better understanding of this. When an organization is trying to compare, does experience end up factoring in? The reason I'm asking is, let's say you have a company that has been a recent startup company by a minority, and they're competing against a company that's got 10 years experience. I'm not sure that the fact that the county or other people, if we're using experience as a criteria, which we do in county contracts, that's accounted for. It would sound to me like a disparity study would automatically rule against, find a disparity based on race, if that's the reason, when it could actually be on years and experience, which is part of our bid process. Can you explain that, please?
Yes, and you're pointing out one of the things that makes conducting disparity studies so difficult. What this ultimately comes down to is it's a math equation, basically. You're looking at availability of firms in certain demographics and certain disciplines, as the numerator, and then the denominator is basically all firms in those same disciplines. So you're looking for what percentage of work, if you, you know, the law of large numbers, if we were letting 1 million contracts a year and there were no bias in the system, what percentage of work do you believe would go to the minority firms, for example? Here, if we're requiring experience, and Commissioner Sharif also mentioned bonding, for example, these are things that can stand in the way of minority firms, firms with lower capitalization, firms with lower experience from getting jobs. If they're essential, then in the disparity study, that should be recognized, and it should be an adjustment so that you wouldn't find a disparity. We needed someone with 10 years experience. There were only 2 firms, you know, in a certain category, so you would expect that outcome. However, if we could say it's 5 years experience or 3 years experience, then maybe our contracting systems are an impediment to equitable allocation of contracts. So it's a very difficult question, and it's why these disparity studies are expensive. And once you conduct a disparity study, then it is going to be subjected to heightened court scrutiny, potentially even strict scrutiny. And the type of issue you just mentioned is one of the things that people who want to attack the study will point out.
So that the people doing the study might or might not deal with that.
They should account for it, but they're, like any study, they're going to bring into it certain assumptions.
Okay.
And so they're going to look at it, and they'll look at other, for example, in construction or engineering, they'll look at other markets and say they're requiring only 5 years experience, you're requiring 10. Now, why do you have 10? Is that a neutral contracting requirement that is just too restrictive and you should loosen it up? Or is there some sort of bias in the system? That's what they will try to discuss.
And then my last question, and then as I said, I'll reserve my remarks later, is to what extent has government been or can government require disclosure of ethnicity? How do you deal with someone who is multi-ethnic? How do you deal with people who simply say none of your damn business and refuse to disclose ethnicity, which I would presume these days would primarily be white and or Trump voters. But can you just, you know, how do you deal with the disclosure and the multi-ethnic?
I don't have a great answer for you on multi-ethnic. I think it's, I'm sure that, I was very involved with the disparity study back in 2010 and with these programs back in 2008. But I'm sure things have evolved quite a bit since then. However, we believe that you can require it. And when you say, how do you deal with it if people don't provide it? Well, you can make it a contracting term, theoretically, where you could ask for this information from primes. You could ask primes to provide the information for their subs, so you see exactly what we have. And you know, if they, it has to be asked the right way, so that it doesn't create the perception that you're creating a preference, you know, before you've analyzed the data. And it probably makes sense, if you're going to collect that information, to also avoid somebody arguing that that is being filtered into the evaluation committees and the selection committees, to provide that information to some sort of independent entity with the county, so that there's some sort of firewall up between the folks who evaluate proposals and the folks who receive that information.
So if they haven't gotten the data in the past, can they now do, well, you're saying you can require that as a condition of getting a contract, but I would assume that maybe we could start requiring it now, but that doesn't, and tell people that if you want a contract, you must disclose, but that does not deal with the contracts over the past 5 or 10 years. So I don't know how you'd be able to do that study.
Yeah, I don't know how much data we've collected. I know there's some data that's collected. I just haven't seen it. But it has to be, since you're not going to have 100% of firms responding, it has to be reliable, you know, statistically representative. So those are things that statisticians will get into to determine if we could. I think I mentioned to you, I mentioned to some of you during briefings, back in 2008, when we suspended the WBE program and the MBE programs, part of it was because the disparity study had lapsed, but part of it was the data was, frankly, extremely insufficient back then. And we just didn't think we could defend it in court if it came up. At this point, you could look to your internal data, see what's there, see if it makes sense to either build upon that by collecting more data internally or by framing out some sort of disparity study that, you want to see done. It's a question of timing, Senator Geller, really as to when you would want to do it.
Thank you. You've answered my questions. I will reserve my remarks. Commissioner Ryan, followed by Commissioner Bogan, then Senator Rich.
The key to getting to where Commissioner Holness wants us to be, and I agree with your goals, is how do we navigate through this, this legal morass that it's very, very tricky when you have a government-sanctioned study to remedy some market disparity based upon race or gender. So my question to the county attorney, we went through this about a dozen years ago, and it was evident that you get under this strict scrutiny when you're looking at some preference based upon race, and then you get under I think it's some intermediate scrutiny when you look at a disparities in preference based upon gender, and I believe that's what led us to our small business enterprise and local business enterprise. So we look at preferences based upon newly formed companies. We give preferences to local companies, and we don't get into this heightened scrutiny, and it's worked for us. But in order for us to get some accurate data, because I'm in favor of data collection and data analysis versus the study because of the legal briar patch you've got to walk through when you start doing a study, and you're going to factor in the questions where we're trying to get to remedying inadequate or inequitable amount of work, percentage of work that may be going to minorities and to women. So can we, as part of a vendor certification, you have to apply to get this certification so that you can even bid on county contracts, large or small. Can you have a question as part of the certification to ask about the company's ownership based upon race and gender? Is that, even asking that question, I don't think that that's a legal impediment, but can you speak to it?
I think you can, Commissioner Ryan. I think that's legitimate. We've been trying to do a bit of research on this. I don't know if Adam Katzman is on the line. He's looking into it as well. We believe we can ask the question as long as it is framed properly. We think it's probably legitimate. I haven't looked specifically at asking it when somebody tries to go into a registry, because remember, the registry at this point is only for CBs and SBEs, so it leaves out a lot of other firms, the larger firms. That's why when we were analyzing it, we were thinking of it in terms of when somebody's going to be awarded the contract, either they're actually responding to a solicitation or a contract award, they understand that this information is going to be required not only of them, but also of all their subs.
Yeah, and I think that would be, that would actually take less of the focus off on some preference, is if we had a uniform questionnaire with regard to race and gender for all companies doing business, rather than just for those that were, looking to participate in the, SBE programs. So right now, we may not have enough accurate data in order for us to do the analysis. I believe when we had done this some 15 years ago or so, and when the proposal was to give some preferences. And then I think it was kind of like a fallback position that we had to demonstrate that we had the foundation or the data in which to go forward with this, and that we went back and looked at our data and it was incomplete. Perhaps you could speak on that, because I just don't want to go through the processes where we had struggles, 15 years ago, because then you get deeper into it, and some of the good things that we're trying to accomplish now may be jeopardized. I'm not trying to put a poison pill in here. I'm just trying to make sure that we start on the right foot.
What I think happened in 2010 is I think it was premature for there to be a disparity study at that time, and the reason had to do with some, I won't get inside baseball on it. We were very active in drafting the CBE program, and the CBE program registry was populated a certain way that I think, created some problems with the data. I frankly, and I was around at the time and advising on it, I thought that it would not show any broad underutilization or disparity for reasons having more to do with the CBE program than how the market would otherwise behave. At this point, yeah.
All right, so that's my suggestion, and, I'll defer to the sponsor of the proposal, but what I'd like to see happen is that in the short term, that we look at any way that we can make it easier for small businesses to qualify. I talk to small businesses and they just say either the paperwork is too cumbersome, the requirements are too difficult, the insurance is too high, the bonding requirements they can't meet. So maybe there may be, certain contracts that can be split up into smaller chunks where you don't have to have so much capital and size, number of employees in your business to be able to begin to participate. And it's almost like once you get your foot in the door and realize that you can do the work, it benefits not only the small businesses, but it actually benefits the county too, because the more qualified businesses that we have, the stronger the competition, and it keeps everybody on their toes. So let's, look, maybe we could do this in the short term and then try to strengthen our data collection processes and go forward with it.
Are you done, Commissioner Ryan? That's it. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Bogan, followed by Senator Rich. Commissioner Bogan, you recognize, sir.
Yeah, when I went over this on agenda review, I asked Monica, I asked you, do we have a lot of that data already? Can you answer that question, Monica?
Yes, and we have Director Sandy Michael McDonald on the line that can further explain exactly what we have, but yes, we do have a lot of that data. The information that we ask related to race and gender is voluntary on the vendor's side to provide, but I understand that we have a very large percentage of compliance.
Okay.
The only piece of it that we don't know is the verification of that beyond, but we do have a lot of that data.
Okay, and I also asked you a second question. What was the cost that you estimated to do this study?
The studies that we have seen elsewhere for governments that are large in nature is about $1 million.
Yeah, and so I'd like to say to the sponsor, Commissioner Holness, while I think it's valuable data, I think we have a lot of it already, but I just can't see spending $1 million on this, and especially when our needs of money is so important for so many other things, as a man was standing right here with no home for him and his kids. So I'm going by what I've been told, the answers to what I've been asked, that we have a lot of the data. I think we should see what we have first, and then go and see what holes are missing from there, and then take it from there.
Thank you, Commissioner Bogan. Senator Rich, you recognize me.
I don't want to shock Commissioner Brogan too much, but I totally agree with him.
He just fell out of his chair.
Wait a minute. That's like 3 today. That's it.
He was going.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
I totally
Please
agree with
proceed.
Commissioner Bogan. Oh, there you go. Okay. All right.
On everything
So-
you heard.
No, I didn't say everything. On this issue. Yeah. No, I kind of had the same thought process and conversation, with Monica and Drew when, during my review. And I just think we need to look at the data we have first and see, where we are before we decide to or determine whether we want to go into a study, since we know that they are kind of fraught, with the difficulties and disfavored by the courts. So I think, and also, I want to mention, we have our new Race and Equity Task Force, and I'm just wondering, we really should involve them in this. And also, we have the Status of Women study, because this is partially, it's women and minorities, and which we could really probably utilize to get information that we might not have, although I think probably they could come up with a lot of it. But again, I just think we need to look at what we have first before we move to asking for a proposal to conduct a disparity study.
Okay, are there any other speakers before I speak and then Commissioner Holness to close? Seeing no other speakers, let me make my remarks then. I have some issues with the proposal today for several reasons, including some of the questions that I asked. I am concerned that there could be a finding of racial disparity when we are requiring issues based on experience requirements, and where that's the actual only issue is our experience requirements. I'm concerned, and I've heard a number of people say that we haven't yet fully collected all of the data, because I think what we should be doing, and I'd like if I'm assuming we can do this, is to say that to people that in the future, if you want the county contracts, that you need to disclose ethnicity. I'm concerned about that. I'll get to that in a moment. But if you want a county contract, you may need to be disclosing this so that we have that data. Without that data, I just don't know how they're going, a disparity company is going to come up with an accurate issue. I am concerned, and I'm not sure legally to what extent either we or a disparity study company can compel some of this. And I mean, my people don't have a really good experience when being asked to disclose our religion. It normally has not been that, we're being asked to disclose our religion and put stars on our arms because people are trying to help us. So I think you may find people that just are unwilling to comply with this type of data collection, and I can understand that, because they may say, well, yeah, they say they're trying to help us, but we really know better. I asked the county attorney on how one would comply with multi-ethnic people, and the response that I got was, I think, and I don't want to misquote you, was, yeah, that's a good question. And finally, to the extent that we are able, and I don't know to what extent we can legally get that, but to the extent that we can legally collect this data, we or anybody can collect this, I think what we're going to end up finding is, before we analyze the data or before we collect it, if you show me the company that's doing the study and their past record, I'll tell you what their report is going to be, because I've been involved in government since 1988. And during that time, I can almost always tell, you show me what the company is, you show me what their studies in the past have been, and I can almost, with better than 95% accuracy, tell you what the results are going to be before they look at the first piece of data. And I think everybody here knows that to be true. So I am concerned about that. When the county, I would feel much better at looking at data collected by the county, knowing that it's being looked at objectively, and as opposed to people that have agenda. And if you hire a company that, sometimes that they may have a track record of saying there's never a disparity, and that's probably what they'll say here. Or they'll say there's always a disparity, and that's what they'll say here, because that's just my experience with studies. And so I do have concerns about all of this, and that's my view. And to close, Commissioner Holness, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you. Just to deal with the point you just made, the company that did the disparity study for us in 2010 has done others and came to different conclusions. So to say that a company is going to predetermine what the outcome is going to be before they start, I don't know that it's fair to these companies. It basically is impugning their integrity, even before we look at what they have done. So let me deal with some of the other issues. I believe that I've probably been more engaged with this than anyone else on this dais over the years that I've been here. And I'll say this, that we've done a credible job in trying to address some of the issues that came out of this part of the study, and made some adjustments along the way. And I'd like to deal with some of the issues that came up. And if I may, County Attorney, you're saying going forward we can collect and ask for these data information without violating anyone's rights. I thought we would have been doing that. I thought would have been a bit more robust. With the language that you mentioned early in our briefing, I know we are collecting some data voluntarily, but from the way you sound, we didn't have to just do it voluntarily. Am I correct in that?
I think that is right, Commissioner. I'm giving you my opinion based upon me discussing it with a few other people who have studied on it. We think we can ask, and the reason we think we can is obviously the disparity firm would have to ask. If you can't get the information, you ultimately can't answer the question. So that's why I suggested that if we did it, we think it makes sense to create some sort of a firewall between where that information is collected and the folks who are actually making the contracting decisions, just to avoid claims that are very foreseeable.
So that's one thing that we can probably deal with now based on the conversation we're having. If a county administrator and county attorney, can I get some assurance that you will work together to implement a system following the guidance of the county attorney to require, or however it is done, to get this data?
Bertha, may I just say, if it's the direction of the board, what I would do is we have very good lawyers who've been working on this. We would ask them if, again, the board wants us to do this, to come up with some standard contract language that we could put into effect very quickly. And the only way that wouldn't occur is if one of my lawyers convinces me over the next week or so that I've oversimplified things, or there's some nuance, and maybe we can't go as far as what I'm saying, although I think we can. We'll explain that to you. But it's very easy to put this language into contract. We would need to make sure, and again, it's just for safety reasons, that we figure out how the firewall is established, just to avoid potential claims down the road.
Thank you. Is there any objection, Mr. Mayor, from anyone on the board that the county attorney work with the county administrator to do this?
County Attorney, is this something that requires a vote?
Normally, we won't insert language into a contract unless we're directed to do so.
Okay. County Attorney, I'd like to see what language you're talking about before you start inserting it into contracts. Can we treat this as a motion to direct you to draft something and bring it back to the commission? Commissioner Holness, does that work for you?
That would work for me. And so I would make a motion, and I have some more discussion, so we probably adjust the first motion I have, but since.
Back in 2 weeks?
So if I could make a motion that we direct the county attorney to work with the county administrator to bring back language to collect the data that we need in order to determine where we are in the award of our contracts, that would be my motion.
Okay, County Attorney, can we do that? That has not been noticed. Can we bring that motion today?
Absolutely, you're not taking final action, and I think it rose out of the discussion, so I think it's
Broad enough.
legitimate.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't understand the motion, please. Can you just repeat that?
County attorney, would you state what the motion should be?
Yes, sir.
Senator Rich?
You want us to work with the county attorney's office, to work with county administration to come up with some proposed contract language, so language that would be inserted into county contracts, involving county procurements, to collect data that would be appropriate to determining whether there's underutilization, basically, or a disparity study.
Correct.
Right?
All right. Does everyone understand the motion?
No, it doesn't make, Mayor,
Okay.
it doesn't, so a
Wait,
county
wait,
has a
wait, hold on.
contract.
Give me 1 second, because I saw Senator Rich first, then your second, Commissioner Bogan, then Dr. Sharif, then Commissioner Ryan. That's the order I saw your hands in. Senator Rich, followed by Commissioner Bogan.
So I think that this is different from what we were talking about.
It is.
Yeah, you're saying to collect data, and we were saying, or some of us were saying at least, that we should look at the data we have before we start talking about what we need to collect.
We're going to come back to that, but here's the situation that we're in right now, if I may, Mayor.
Go ahead.
Here's the situation we're in now, Senator Rich. Yes, we've been collecting data voluntarily. It's limited data nonetheless. It's not as robust as it could be. All right? And I'm going to deal with something else after that. But so what we're saying at this point in time, since we're here, based on the conversation that I'm hearing from the county attorney and our staff, yes, we have some data, but let's at least at this moment, going forward, put something in place that will allow us to get the data as to gender and ethnicity in a more robust way than we're doing now, because our county attorney has indicated that we can do that without a problem. And it will come back to this board in 2 weeks' time for you to look at the language he's proposing for us to then vote on it.
All right, so
Senator
just
Rich.
clarifying, so we're talking for the rest of the data to be looking at what we have already. Then-
That's correct. I'm going to come back and do
Then the
it.
county
yes.
attorney is going to come back to us with language that he would be proposing to deal with
Going forward.
getting the ethnicity and so forth before
Gender.
anything actually gets done, implemented, put into a contract, right?
Yes,
Okay,
going
thank you.
forward.
Okay, Commissioner Bogan, followed by Dr. Sharif. You can recognize
I'm
Commissioner
going to just
Bogan.
deal directly with county attorney. Give me an example, Drew, of what, I don't understand, if we have a contract with a vendor, what could we decipher from the vendor? I don't get it.
So not existing contracts, because we can't insert, new
I got
requirements.
new contract.
So, yeah, so for new contracts, simply stated, is a controlling interest in your firm, this is oversimplified, we may get into, something other than controlling interest, it may be broader than that, but is a controlling interest in your firm, held by women, held by African Americans, held by Hispanic Americans. And secondly, we'd figure out for the primes whether they're minority firms, minority-controlled firms. Then you also require in the contract for the prime, just like we do, we say on a lot of things that the prime has to do X, and you're going to make sure your subs also do X, or else you're in breach of contract as a prime. So we put into the contract that you're also going to obtain this same information, these same survey results from all of your subs. And since we know the percentage of work that goes to each sub, we're basically in a sense, conducting our own in-house disparity study, which, in order to be.
Now I understand.
Yeah, okay. And by the way, I just want to make sure everyone at least accepts this at this point. Even if we collected that data and we felt it were very reliable, at some point, because of the heightened court scrutiny, we'd still want to send it outside for analysis, basically.
Okay, did that answer your question fully, Commissioner Bogan? Thank you. Dr. Sharif, followed by Commissioner Ryan.
I just want to be clear on something. So if the information that we have in the database right now is incomplete, and you're going to take that information and you're going to expand upon it by asking further information and questions of the people who are the primes and who are giving the business to the subs. And then you turn around and it's voluntary in participation. Are you going to be able to prove anything? Are we going to be able to say that we have X number of vendors that are qualified and capable? And I mean, because you're saying, you're using the term internal disparity study, but in order to show disparity, you have to have enough vendor participation. We got the same people that keep getting the contracts over and over again. We got a lot of the same subs getting the contracts over and over again. So you won't be able to show that you have an opportunity for new people to get business so that you can actually have the disparity. Does that make sense?
It does, Commissioner Sharif, and again, this is why disparity studies are so difficult. So on one side, you look at it and you try to figure out availability of firms, and then you have to look at some of those obstacles that are there, experience, bonding capacity, size of the contract, all of that. And then on the other side, you're figuring out actual utilization. So what I was talking about specifically in response to what Commissioner Holness is asking for is utilization. So these are the firms that are getting our contract dollars either directly or indirectly by being subs. Are these firms owned and controlled by white men, African Americans, white women, Hispanics, and if they won't answer, they'd be in breach of contract. Whether they're answering reliably, that's something I don't know how you test it, because I'm not an expert in disparity studies. I'm sure you make allowance for there being a certain amount of inaccuracy in there.
So let me just say that I'm a member of the National Minority Supplier Diversity, and one of the things that I had to do to prove my ethnicity was to actually give them, and it was crazy, my grandparents' birth certificates. And I'm serious, I couldn't get my certification as a minority vendor unless I gave my grandparents and my parents' birth certificates, which I did. I did that to prove that I was in fact Black. And so what I'm saying is there is no way to really have a reliable factor unless you're doing something that's verifiable like that. Like in terms of these studies to say, okay, we have 80% minority participation from African Americans or Hispanics or whatever it is, whatever ethnicity you're trying to prove that you have the disparity from, because we're not asking for proof, we're just asking to answer a question. So I guess where I'm at is I don't think it warrants $1 million. I don't think it's going to tell us anything that we don't already know. But I also don't want to spend a lot of time and staff resources on it if it's not going to yield what we need it to do. And that is to prove that we have some form of disparity in the system of awards or vendor participation. And I just don't see us getting there with adding a few questions. You have to have something that's verifiable. So those are my remarks. I will stop now.
Thank you, Dr. Sharif. I want to remind everyone that we are currently on the Holness request to draft to the county attorney, and we are not currently on item number 83. We are just on his discussing his request to the county attorney to draft something. Commissioner Ryan, No, Dr. Sharif, Commissioner Holness asked to have the county attorney draft something to come back to the commission to work with administration. And this is not a substitute, this was in addition, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'm just trying, that's what we're actually discussing right now. Commissioner Ryan, followed by Vice Mayor Udine.
On the motion to direct, so you're going to put some language that can be, I guess, a question or a series of questions to all the vendors that are currently under contract? Is that initially what you planned on inserting into contract documents?
It would be for new contracts, but new contracts could include, amendments above a certain size theoretically.
Right, yeah, because I was going to say, those that are currently under contract, they have, not to be redundant, their contract rights, and they're under contract. That wasn't, one of the requirements to get under contract. I'd like to have you, with that motion to direct, to include that not just under the contracts, but also for those who submit applications to qualify to be a qualified vendor to participate in the procurement process, whether it's large or small. And I'd also like, when you bring that back, if through county administration, you can get with Sandy Michael McDonald's shop and whoever you might else work with on the procurement process, and come up with some ideas on, is there any way that we can take some of these contracts and flatten them out, make smaller increments to make it easier for small businesses to participate, and whether you're a minority owned or a majority women ownership, just small businesses in general that can be able to participate more easily in the procurement process. So I don't think that that's a significant jump in what you're asking for, Commissioner Holness. Is that okay? You and I have not agreed on one thing this afternoon. How about that?
I accept your amendment if you're seconding the amendment. If you're
right.
seconding the motion.
With one arm twisted way behind my back, I second it.
Okay,
All
so
right.
so if we
Wait,
can.
no. We're not quite done yet. Vice Mayor Udine, you're recognized, sir.
I just wanted to ask one question. So, because this gets very confusing and it gets mired down in a lot of different things, and I'm no expert in our different programs that we have. I only know what I know when I work with Sandy Michael McDonald and when I speak with him and when he comes out. So he's always told me that all of these small business and CBE businesses and all the different initials are, what I know is that they're extremely successful, they're award-winning, because we've won awards for these, and they're serving their purpose of getting a lot of business in Broward County to small business. So I want to continue doing that, and what Sandy always tells me is these are gender and race neutral. I don't, based on the conversation we're hearing, I know what that means just in layman's terms, but I'm not sure I know what it means in these terms. Is this, and if Sandy's on the phone, does he need more information in our future contracting to help with this program? If he does, then I'm going to support the Holness/Ryan amendment. If he doesn't, then I'm not going to support it. I just want to know what staff needs to move this forward.
Okay, Mr. McDonald, are you on the phone?
He's on the line.
Mr.
Yes,
McDonald?
I am, Mayor, Commissioner.
Did you hear Vice Mayor Udine's question, sir?
I missed his last piece. AT&T was cutting me on. He was asking.
Okay, well,
if
hold
I
on
know
one
what I
moment
need.
then, Mr. McDonald. Vice Mayor, if you can repeat your question or statement now that Sandy's on the line.
So
Just the end of it.
The end of it was, you have always told me that our program is successful. We're delivering a lot of business to small businesses throughout the county, that you have the tools you need. My question is, you've always told me that these are gender and race neutral type of programs because there's different scrutiny for the courts. Do you need more information as what Commissioner Holness and Commissioner Ryan mentioned, to continue with these programs, or do we have what we need in county admin before we go further? I think that's my question.
Yep, I got that. Thanks, Vice Mayor. To what Commissioner Holness and Commissioner Ryan is speaking to, then more would be required because to the point you made, I've always articulated since I've been here, we currently run a race and gender neutral program. That means we're inviting to everyone based on our geography and the financial thresholds that we put in place. But if we want to find out within that race and gender neutral program how the minorities, specifically the African Americans or the Hispanics or the women businesses are doing, then you're going to have to collect more to do so. We have some of that. About 95% of that for the CBEs in terms of race and gender as a voluntary question. We're comfortable that 95% of our CBEs have answered that question as a part of our process voluntarily. But we would have to check if we were really trying to find out the opportunities that were made available or that was missed by minorities or women or others. We would have to also have that same mirror for our prime contractors. And that's what I believe the county attorney has spent the last few minutes trying to articulate, that where I might be getting it voluntarily and it still needs to be validated, we would have to do something similar on the prime contractor side. And one of the recommendations he just said, but he would go back with his team to look to see if that could be done with some sort of contractual language in working with the primes. So if we wanted to know more about what is being given to our minorities, to our women, and to others, yes, you got to have more data to do that. That is true.
Did that answer your question, Vice Mayor?
It did answer my question. So I think he's saying we already have the first layer in county administration. That I'd like to see that first as we move forward, and then if there's a need for further information, I'm happy to get further data, but I don't think we need to spend $1 million to do it.
That's not what we're discussing right now. I want to remind everybody, we are on Commissioner Holness's motion to direct as opposed to item 83.
But that's what's on the screen, Mayor. It's 83.
Yes, but as part of 83, he's brought up a new motion in the middle. Yes, but I've been very clear. We're right now.
This is like a
on his
bad
motion
dream,
to
you know
direct.
that? It's like a really bad-
Commissioner Furr, you're recognized, sir.
Given what Sandy just said, it sounds like we have with 95% voluntarily getting information. That is, we're going
Without
to
the
get.
data from the contractors
CBE,
themselves.
Right, I know
not
that.
prime,
Right. So but from that, you can derive an awful lot.
not prime.
Okay.
Okay.
I think you're deriving what the information you actually want to get.
Okay.
But, okay.
Commissioner Fisher, did you have your hand up?
I think it's where Commissioner Furr actually started this whole conversation, was that how we just talked about it again. So I think we have the data now to look at so that we can come forward. I just hate to rush into something 2 weeks from now for
Okay.
to have administration and the attorney try to come up with
Yes,
something
looking at
2
the
weeks from now
data.
to try to
My
put in a
God.
contract.
Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Mayor, what day is it?
Shortly, it will be Wednesday. County Attorney, I have a question for you first. Can you reasonably draft this in the next 2 weeks and get it dispersed in time? Or does this motion need to be that this comes back after you have had the ability to draft this? Because this sounds like this will require a great deal of research.
Yeah, I mean, we could get you something, but it would be supplemental late. However, if you want to start with the data, which I think Commissioner Furr just talked about and Commissioner Fisher just talked about, to see what's there, that analyzing that may help us in framing the contract language. So if we were going to look at that data first to see exactly how we've been asking it and really research this thing thoroughly, it probably is more than 2 weeks to get final direction.
Okay,
from the board.
Commissioner Holness, do you wish to amend?
Yeah, let me amend it to bring it back when we come back in August, please. I mean, okay,
All right,
so the county attorney has more time?
Right, so
Okay. That settles that.
All right, now, let me also say that county attorney, as we vote county attorney, and to everyone else, I'm not sure what we're going to get back.
We don't know.
So I'm not going to debate it until I see what we get back. So, in the meantime, Commissioner Holness now has a motion to direct the county attorney to look at the data and
Not to
bring
look-
it,
No, to draft.
to me, to draft language.
To insert in our contracts, a procurement process, to collect the data that we may need to look at to determine whether there is any disparity in our contract.
Okay.
That's what he's doing.
Right. Now, everyone has heard the motion. It has been debated way extensively. All those in favor of the Holness motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Two. Let's see a show of hands, please. All those in favor of the Holness motion, please signify by saying, yes, sir.
The Holness amended motion?
The Holness amended motion, which is not item 83. He's going to bring item 83 up when we're done with this. This is a motion to direct. The amended motion.
It's not even an amended motion.
The
It's a-
amended motion
so
to direct.
Let me try this. It's a motion to direct the county attorney to work with our county administration to put language together that we can put in our contracting process to collect data. That's it, nothing else.
And we still have to vote on that when it comes back?
That's correct.
Right. Okay. All those, does everybody understand that? All those in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. Okay, show that passed 9-0.
Wow.
We are now back on item 83, which I hope will be mercifully brief.
It won't-
Commissioner, that was
Mayor.
an addition. I asked the county attorney, were you people not listening? I asked the county attorney earlier if he could bring this up in the middle of the motion. County attorney said yes.
It's the most confusing thing that we've ever done.
No, just one of the most confusing things.
Item 83 on the screen, and you keep telling commissioners not to talk about item 83, and we're talking about something that's not even on the agenda. That we haven't been-
I,
It is
on the agenda. I asked the county
What
attorney.
we just voted on was not on the agenda.
Dr. Sharif, I asked the county attorney, because I had questions whether it could come up. The county attorney said yes. We have now voted on it. County attorney,
It deals with
it's
disparity.
all your fault.
And-
No.
It's not outside of disparities, not outside of the language.
Shh,
And ju-
please, county attorney.
And just so you understand, because you may hear me a month from now saying, no, I don't think you can raise it, here, this is a natural outgrowth of a motion to discuss.
That's right.
That's all, but but it also, in a sense, you're going to defer this, I mean, it sort of resolves, I don't know where this goes
So
at that.
let me, if you can give me a chance, I mean, everybody, Mayor, has debated around and around and around.
Including you, Commissioner.
But
So-
let me say this, in terms
Right.
of when you look at the time spent, this is my item, I would probably be the one making more statements than anyone else.
I
So-
believe you have been,
So-
Commissioner.
so let
but
me-
please
if I may, let
continue.
me just go ahead
I
and-
want to wrap this up quickly. So please, Commissioner Holness is closing on item number 83 right now.
So let me say this. We're often sensitive to ideas and issues that deals with race and gender. And yes, we have a debate here on going around this issue in many ways. Let me ask some direct questions, if I may, County Administrator of Mr. Sandy Michael McDonald's, to get some clarification as to why we're here discussing this item, because I've been involved with this extensively. I've been to many of the meetings for CBE program, talked to many of them. They reach out to me all the time. I kind of know a little bit of what's going on here, okay? So if I may, Mr. Sandy Michael McDonald, County Administrator, allowing.
Mr. McDonald, are you on the line?
There are some questions.
Yes, I'm here, Mayor.
Okay.
There are some questions that were asked earlier. In terms of,
He's closing. Please proceed. Okay. Please proceed, sir.
In terms of some of the things that we're doing, the question is, do we know for sure what or prime contracting opportunities look like for women and minorities? That's one. Two.
Wait, let him ask them one at a time, please, so
Yes.
we can respond. Mr. McDonald, he's going to ask you a series of questions. Please respond after each question.
Yes, his first question is, do we know what prime opportunities are made available for our minority and women businesses
And their participation.
and their
Level of part-
participation?
Yes.
Well, for prime opportunities, we may not know their participation because we would have to check that, as you guys have been discussing, about the gender and ethnicity under the prime contractors. Could we tell you, based on contracting opportunities for CBEs who may have served as a prime or sub? Yes, because we know at least 95% of all of our certified firms who they are by race and by gender.
Okay, so for prime, we don't. Okay, that's the reason why we're discussing this item, colleagues, if I can. It seems as if our meeting is broken apart.
Please proceed, Commissioner.
Commissioner, we've heard this already. You started it before. Now you're doing it again. I mean, we've been talking about this.
Commissioner Bogan,
So for
let
him
him
to
close.
sit back and say, I demand us to listen is rude. I've heard it. We've heard it. How many times?
Commissioner, let
No,
him
it's-
close, please.
Well, you're hijacking the meetings. Why don't you just take another 3 hours and continue?
Commissioner Bogan, let him close, please.
Mayor, why don't you get control of the meeting?
I have control of the meeting. Commissioner Bogan, let him close, please. I'm trying to wrap this up. Commissioner Holness, please close.
Yeah, well, he's not allowing me to speak.
He is
Mayor.
allowing you to speak.
He's interrupting me every time I open
Okay.
my mouth. I didn't interrupt anyone else.
Commissioner Holness, I'm, you're
And talk
closing
about
right
being
now.
rude. Issues came up, Mr. Sandy Michael McDonald, about making contracts smaller. Have we not been making the contracts smaller and allowing for our vendors, smaller vendors? And
We have been making contracts smaller. That's the buzzword you often hear us say when we use the terms like unbundle.
Okay.
Most recently, you guys took a look at an unbundling when it came to your janitorial.
Clean
You
services.
ended up approving 6 CBE reserves and 8 CBE reserves and 6 SBE reserves. We could always do more of that, but yes, we have been working towards unbundling.
in terms of bonding requirements, have we been working to reduce that also?
We have been working to reduce that. We do 2 workshops a year, but there's always a need to have access to capital for bonding and working with agencies to at least increase bonding capacity for certain small firms, as well as get some small firms started in their bonding capacity. And we've had several meetings with purchasing, risk management, and FASD about taking a look at our contracts to make sure that where possible, it could be waived or reduced at times. So that's something continuously for small programs across the country you have to continue to do.
The issue of experience came up, and part of what I would say to you, Mayor, in addressing that, we need to, why I want us to do research on the study is to find a nexus as to why we're requiring 10 years, 5 years, or whatever it is. Is it just arbitrarily done? And that's part of what we would be able to determine if we did some sort of study that would look at the marketplace and see what the requirements are there. Am I correct in that assessment, Director Michael McDonald?
Yes, that's correct. That is one of the things that we work with our user agencies and purchasing about, to make sure that when they put those years on it, that there's some substance to the years and not arbitrarily just coming up with a number. But that's certainly something we have to keep our eye on. That's correct.
And finally, if we, and county attorney, you may chime in on this because you were here when we had the program that we needed to defend. A study would do research to determine some of the questions that were asked. How do we know that this person is a minority, a woman, or what have you? Part of that, wouldn't that be in county administrator also, and Mr. Michael McDonald? Wouldn't that be some of the verifications that someone who's doing a study would do to verify whether or not these vendors are who they say they are, these prime are who they say are in terms of the ownership of their companies?
Some of that would be, I'll let Drew speak if he remembers from 10 to 12 years ago. Other parts of that, those who do the study wants to validate what you have in your data and to see how you did your verifications, if you did any.
That's correct.
Okay.
There would be validation at some point. Either they're collecting data themselves or they're validating what we have. But there would have to be some process you go through to make sure it's reliable.
So to close on this, let me say this, that yes, we have a program and it works well, but we don't know how well it's working or not working. And this is what some research would do. I hear $1 million being bandied about. That's why I asked for this. We don't have to go out and spend $1 million. Maybe it's $100,000 that we need to spend. Maybe it's $200,000. Maybe we don't need to do it at all. That is why I asked that the staff would go and do some research and come back with a proposal to tell us what's the appropriate way to go. I don't understand why everyone thinks it's going to be $1 million. I'm not asking for $1 million. Nothing on this paper says we're going to spend $1 million. Nothing on this paper say exactly how we're going to do this. It asks for our staff to come back and tell us. So let me amend this motion to make it probably simpler. And again, I know we run away from this issue all the time because we don't want to deal with it. Let me do this. Motion to direct county staff to submit, motion to direct county staff to look at a possible way to determine, I wrote so much over this paper, I'm trying to.
I gave you fresh paper.
County staff, yeah, you gave me extra, I know. County staff to look at possible study in the award of counties' prime contracts and subcontracts to business owned by minorities and women. It could be something that we do from internally. We don't have to do it externally. They can come back and tell us what would be the best approach to take to look at this. And part of what you asked for is the staff to do just that already. Okay. So that would be what I'd change my motion to be.
Commissioner Holness, we've been on this item for an hour and a half, and in closing, you're amending it. Let me call on the county attorney first. County attorney, you've indicated to me that you think that what we're doing now may be moot. Can you elaborate, please?
Well, normally, when you modify a motion, and you pass it, the vehicle's gone, right? So there's one thing on the agenda. This is just a motion to direct to staff, however, so, you have complete flexibility. You're not making a final decision on things today. You're asking for an analysis to be performed and brought back. That's all.
Can you repeat, if you are able to, what the final motion is now?
Is he withdrawing what he already got passed?
No, I'm trying to figure out. County attorney, please assist here.
Here's my understanding of it is that what Commissioner Holness would like for staff to do is to basically analyze our existing processes, procedures, et cetera, to figure out, what may be done further to eliminate impediments to equitable contracting, and B, to come back to the board with what the results of that analysis are to figure out whether there should be, and county administration would recommend that there be some sort of disparity study, which does not have to be a soup to nuts study. It could be a subset of issues that disparity study firms sometimes analyze.
And I did that based on the conversation we're having.
I understand.
Commissioner Furr actually says, we got some data, let's look at the data. Others of you said the same thing. So I'm adjusting to that.
Okay. Is there a second to Commissioner Holness's amended motion?
I'd like to be able to speak to item 83 as I requested.
Okay. Is there a second first?
Obviously, the motion is to have staff compile the information that they have, bring it back to us as a board after the break or sometime in the future to determine whether we're already doing a good job, whether we need to do better, whether we need to look at what we're doing. Just something internally for staff to work at.
Yes.
That's the motion? I'll
Yes.
second it.
All right. Does everybody understand the amended motion?
We said that over an hour ago. The first two,
So that's
three
right.
of us said that over an hour ago.
Don't be rude. Don't be rude.
I'm not.
Okay, stop.
So I amended it to
And
do that.
Dr. Sharif. Vote on the motion. Okay, well, is there any debate on the amended motion?
I
I
have
believe
a-
I've seen
I'm
Dr.
gonna make-
Sharif, then Commissioner Bogan, then Commissioner
Okay,
Fisher.
I asked to speak to item 83, and you said he was going to close, and that was 30 minutes ago. So now I want to speak to 83, like I said before, and here's what I'd like to say. To the people that are looking at this, sometimes statements are made from this commission dais that the rest of us are not in tune with the business community, and that's just simply not the case. And I want people to understand, Commissioner Holness is not the only commissioner up here that has people contacting him about small business. As mayor, I was Broward Means Business. I got my fair share of people asking about small business. My point that I'm making today is not that that has stopped, that we need to do something that makes sense for everybody. And so when I said what I said over an hour ago, where we've arrived at right now, Commissioner Rich said it, Commissioner Furr said it, I don't know why it's not, but everybody said that over an hour ago, and we're still debating it. What I would like to say is, yes, District 8 has people that are contacting it about business. Yes, I'm aware of the plight of the small business person. I am a small business owner. Yes, we have some issues within our contracting. Yes, we do not connect enough information and data to do a disparity study. And yes, we need to analyze the data that we have right now first. What I don't want to do is get into this and find us with the $800,000 or $1 million price tag. And that's what I was saying previously an hour ago when we said we were speaking to 83 and not speaking to 83 at the same time. So I would like that shown for the record, that just because I don't come up here and spout a bunch of information about small business and about people contacting me, it does not mean that we do not have that coming into our office. It means that I take care of that offline with Sandy and Bertha Henry, okay? And as far as speaking to an item as a commissioner, I'd like to be recognized when I ask to be recognized. Thank you.
Dr. Sharif, we all know that you care about small business. You have a record on that, and I think that.
I just don't think that-
I believe that Commissioner Holness has changed his motion in recognition
Okay.
of the debate.
And I'd just like
So-
to say for the record that I'm black.
Or-
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you for
black.
sharing that.
And,
Okay.
and just in case you couldn't see
Why
that.
haven't you ever told us
I'm
that
black.
before?
Mayor,
Okay,
Mayor,
yes,
if I might,
yes.
I've
Ms.
done
Henry.
2 disparity studies in my career, one in Montgomery County, Ohio, one here in Broward County. I know what is needed to have a disparity study done. I will go back, we will look at the data that we have, and we will identify the gaps, wherever they might be, to be able to determine whether or not we qualify for a race-conscious or gender-conscious program.
Excuse me,
I will
that has
bring
not been
back.
voted on, though, to direct staff. We have not voted on that.
Yeah, you did.
That's what the motion is. Commissioner Bogan, you're recognized, sir, followed by Commissioner Fisher.
Okay. Commissioner Holness, I may be speaking out rudely, but I think I speak for some of my commissioners also. I won't mention names, but we spoke over an hour and a half ago. I asked Monica, do we have data? And you said, yes, we
Yes.
have data. And I asked you how much you felt it would cost to do what Commissioner Holness is suggesting we do on 83, and you estimated it cost about $1 million.
If I may,
Ms. Henry.
that information is correct, because if you're looking at the full veracity of a study for a government this size, you would do that, because they would have to verify and validate
So we
everything that
spoke
we're
over,
doing.
okay, my point is,
And defend us in court.
we spoke over an hour and a half ago about it, but Commissioner Holness wants to talk more about it. And so I want to talk about it, Commissioner Holness. You want to spend $1 million on your study. What about the guy that was standing here that's homeless, doesn't have a home? Would you rather spend the money on your study or the guy that's homeless? Yeah, I heard your motion. I heard your amended motion.
Commissioner Bogan.
I heard your amended motion. You want to take up more staff time, doing more things, of more people's time, when they could be spending time helping the guy who's standing in front of us that can't find, or the thousands or hundreds of people that can't find apartments and housing.
Bogan has the floor.
So I know that you don't really seem to care about our time, but, I care about the staff's time. And I'm going to oppose any more motions asking the staff to look at disparity studies and these matters. And Commissioner, you keep saying over the past couple of years that this area bothers us, like we're very sensitive to this. I don't know who you're talking about, because I'm not sensitive to this. I don't know any commissioners that are sensitive to talking about this. It's just when you want to do a plunger down our throat, time again and again and again, you could smile all you want. I don't know what's so funny.
Commissioner Bogan, please.
No, I mean, I'm just being honest. I'm not attacking him. I'm just saying
trying to keep the
he
meeting
finds
under
everything
control.
so humorous. So,
Okay.
Let's vote on the motion.
yeah.
Right, okay. Commissioner Fisher to close. Commissioner Holness, you've spoken amply. I'm not recognizing you again. Commissioner Fisher, please speak, and then we're voting.
He's been attacking me, though. It's okay.
No, it's not. I'm trying to get this done with. Stop.
Ms. Henry, I'm not sure what the motion is, but if you understand the motion, can you achieve that goal?
So what we were going to do is, this goes back to the comments that Commissioner Furr made early
Which
on.
I had said, that's where we started.
Right.
Yeah,
That's the
Okay.
motion I made.
That's what we're going to do, what Commissioner First said.
correct.
Okay, then I'm okay with that. But I don't want to put a timeline on it for you.
There's not a
okay?
timeline in the
Because
latest
my
motion.
understanding in my agenda review, that no one has accused Broward County of this to date. That's my understanding. So I'm going to go along with it, but I just want to make sure you're okay with doing it and not spending a lot of resource and money on it. Thank you.
We're fine with doing it.
Okay, we are voting now. All those in favor, county attorney and county attorney only, please restate the motion that we're about to vote on.
Thank you. Essentially, okay, yes, so, Bertha's county administration.
County administrator, if you'd like to restate the motion we're about to vote on. Staff will restate the motion, and only staff.
Staff was asked to go back and look at the data that we have to determine whether or not there is if we could determine from the data that we have, sufficient disparity to determine whether we should have a race-conscious, gender-conscious program. And so we know what elements you have to have to be able to make that determination, and we will look at to determine whether we're collecting that data sufficiently enough to be able to make that determination, and we'll come back and let the board know.
Okay, that is the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Show that passing by a vote of 8-1. We will move quickly on to agenda item 86 and then revert to item 84. I believe agenda